Welcome, everybody, to our bereavement support group today. We are very lucky to have Cynthia Oxman come and give us a talk on grief and the holidays because of the time of year it is. And so Cindy is a retired social worker, and she spent many, many years working with palliative care patients on the oncology unit at the local hospital here in Red Deer. Thank you so much, Cindy, for joining us today, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Brenda, and thank you, participants, for taking time out to listen to the presentation that Brenda and I both felt was an important one during this busy time of year. So we thought this would be an appropriate time to start with grief and the holidays. And while the information I'm going to present isn't really new or novel, I hope what it will do is help normalize some of the feelings that you're experiencing now, and will offer some strategies or tips to help you get through this Christmas. So when we experience grief, it seems so personal and isolating. And so what I wanted to share with you to start is just one of the best descriptions of grief that I've ever come across in my readings. And this is by C.S. Lewis, who some of you will know through his writing of the Narnia Chronicles, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and I can't remember the rest of them. But he was a theologian, a philosopher, and he sadly his one and only love, I think, of his life. He met her as a friend, and they were friends and corresponded. She was American, he was British, and they corresponded often while she was married. And then many years later, she ended up divorcing her husband, and then they developed a relationship and were married. And shortly after their marriage, she developed cancer and sadly died after a short struggle with her cancer. So he suffered a tragic loss, and what I admire about him is that he shared those intimate feelings that are so often so difficult to share. And he wrote a book called A Grief Observed. And one of the parts of the book that really moved me was the way he described grief feelings. And he says, "No one ever told me that grief felt so like fear. I am not afraid, but the sensation is like being afraid. The same fluttering in the stomach, the same restlessness, the yawning, I keep on swallowing. At other times, it feels like being mildly drunk or concussed. There is sort of an invisible blanket between the world and me. I find it hard to take in what anyone says, or perhaps I just don't want to take it in. It is so uninteresting, yet I want the others to be around me. I dread the moments when the house is empty. If only they would talk to one another and not to me." And I think most of us, those feelings may resonate with most of us, and they're certainly normal feelings. And I just wanted to take time to make sure that we validate that and we normalize it, because sometimes grief can feel so isolating and make us feel so alone. And one of those times, particularly in the first year of your loss, those milestones that occur throughout the year are so difficult. Christmas being probably one of the most challenging, or this holiday season, for those of you who don't celebrate Christmas. It's the holiday season. And why is that? Well, an author unknown wrote this very short little poem, which I think has quite an impact. "Miracles are very rare, but for Christmas one would do, to hear the doorbell ring and to have you walk smiling through." Such a profound sense of loss in that short poem. Why are holidays so tough, particularly this holiday season? Well, because holidays and those first milestones that we have to experience in the first year of grief, or the first year of the loss, they trigger grief reactions, and they're a harsh reminder of what we have lost when we have those responses and feelings. They remind us of other often unacknowledged losses, the loss of the future, the loss of hope. If we lose a spouse, we've lost our partner. We've lost an income. We might have to face many other changes. We may lose our home. There are so many other losses that are attached and not always acknowledged as as losses. If we've lost a child, those losses are so profound in that we've lost that future. We've lost that sense of grandchildren from that child. All those future things that we would have been able to anticipate. This holidays also emphasize emotional contrasts. We are surrounded by joy, gaiety, color, goodwill, people caroling, song, happy music. Yet we may feel this sense of overwhelming sadness and despair. Holidays also create so many unknowns for us. Our family traditions are turned upside down. Rituals that we've experienced in the past with that person, with our loved one, aren't they're not going to be there to celebrate those rituals and traditions. Everything's so busy during the holiday season, so there's also so much pressure. There's pressure at home, there's pressure at work to get year-end stuff done. Everywhere we go, there's increased traffic, the transit, uh, subways, buses are full. There's malls are crowded and hot and stuffy. There's long lineups at grocery stores. So everywhere we go, there's this sense of intense pressure. And because we're busier, we tend to pay less attention to our needs, to our physical needs, especially the need to eat well, hydrate. We often neglect our need for exercise. So that makes us more vulnerable. When our physical system is weakened, we are going to feel more vulnerable. Feelings can be overwhelming and unexpected. And I'm just going to take a minute to share a story of one of my grief experiences several years ago. I lost my mother in the spring to cancer, and I thought I was doing very well. My mom and I we didn't have a really close relationship, and we lived on opposite sides of the country. So, and I had a busy life. My boys were young. I was working full time. So, I felt I was coping really well. And then I was out Christmas shopping, no less. And I was driving home, and this person cut me off. And I just felt this intense, incredible feeling of rage. Now, full disclosure, I'm someone who has been known to give the royal digit occasionally to other drivers. So I'm not perfect, and I'm not the calmest driver. But this feeling was different. It was so intense, and I felt like I could almost see red. I wanted to get out of the car and just, I don't know, punch that guy. But anyways, I didn't, thank goodness. But I did go home and really think about what is going on with me and why am I feeling this way? And then I realized that this is the first Christmas that I wouldn't be having a phone chat with my mom, and I wouldn't be wrapping up parcels and sending them off to Nova Scotia. So after a while, it just made me stop and think that if I feel this way and I'm supposed to know something about this stuff, then I need to try and help other people through these experiences and normalize those so we don't feel like we're losing it or that we're going insane or that we're just not coping. Because we don't want to feel hopeless. We need to know that we're not alone. So because that incident for me, it was like I thought I did well. I thought I had processed my grief because that's the language we use sometimes. And then I was that guy who cut me off just totally broadsided me and my sense of how well I was functioning. So I'm going to share a few tips and strategies that I've either developed myself or learned from other people or read about. Again, nothing new or novel in this, but hopefully some of them will resonate for you, and there's some things that you can implement. There's no rights or wrongs. There's only a couple of things that I'll really stress, and that is, first of all, anticipate that you're likely to have some of these responses and feelings. Anticipate that this is a tough season to get through. And that way, by anticipating that, you can have a backup plan when things aren't going well for you, or when you are feeling lost, or have that sense of hopelessness and despair. It's great if you can share your feelings with someone. What sometimes is helpful is to find one go-to person, a solid friend who has your back, and that you can just say, can I spend a few minutes every week just processing and expressing the feelings I'm having right now? I'm having such a difficult time. If that's not possible, other things you might be able to do is just write out those feelings, or express them in a drawing or paint, or any other personal way that you can get those feelings away from out of here and in your gut, out into the world, so that you're not keeping them in and holding them all to yourself and keeping them all to yourself. One of the things that's helpful in advance is to think about the traditions that you've always enjoyed in your family over the holidays. And think about, which ones do you want to keep? Which ones are critically important? Which ones you might want to change up, and which ones you should eliminate entirely? That's all very personal, and that's all individual ways. You know what they are, you know what's important. And I think it's helpful to talk to other family members as well, because don't forget, your family members, a lot of us just don't share really well our grief. And this might open up a conversation that we can all feel it's okay to talk about that loved one. Some people like to add new traditions, or a specific or a special ritual just for this first year. Some people build or create these memorial candles. They're just pillar candles, which you kind of decorate with ribbons and things that kind of just maybe just expressions of things that describe that loved one that you've lost. I like with children, this one works really quite well, particularly with children, is creating a garland of memories. And that's just one of those old fashioned paper garlands. Maybe a lot of you who are much younger than me probably don't remember, but we used to make those to decorate the Christmas tree with. It was just a green string of paper or ribbon, and then you'd make little, out of construction paper, you'd just make little rings and wrap them around the garland, and then you'd put them on your tree. Um, on those things, get family members and friends to write a special memory of that person, or what they miss most about that person, or what they loved especially about that person. And then put that on your tree, and then you're celebrating that. It gives you a sense of feeling like you're still sharing, or that person is still part of your family and part of your celebration. And then if you do any of those written memory kinds of things, either in a putting them in a stocking, and then opening them up and reading them on Christmas Day, whether you do the memorial candle or the garland of memories, anything that you do, I encourage you to kind of keep a sort of a scrapbook or a photo album, and keep those memories, but so that you'll have them to pull out from year to year, so that you can include that loved one in your celebration if you choose. Um, a lot of people choose, rather than celebrate or spend Christmas at home and managing some of those traditions that we have, they like to just leave that alone completely, and instead choose to participate in a charitable event. Churches, Salvation Army, those places often put on community Christmas dinners for people who are spending Christmas alone, or who just don't have the money to pay for a Christmas meal. And a lot of people feel a sense of comfort by giving back, and by participating in that event, by serving at the dinners, or by donating to the Christmas Bureau or something like that, just again, so that they're feeling part of the community, and whether they're speaking it or not, they're sharing that experience, and they're not feeling as alone or isolated. Because that's a big one, is to remember you're not alone at Christmas. You're not alone during these momentous times and these difficult times. There is always someone there. We are all of us. There's always someone who is also sharing those experiences and feelings. The biggest thing that I will emphasize besides the anticipation and planning, is the self-care. Self-care is critical at all times, I guess, but particularly at Christmas when, for those reasons I mentioned earlier, we tend to feel so exhausted and drained. We remember to stay hydrated. Carry that water bottle with you wherever you go. Take time out for yourself, whether that's a nice bubble bath in the jet jacuzzi, or whether it's just closing your bedroom door and saying, I need to be alone for a little while. Take time for yourself and just think about your needs. Think about how you're feeling and what's different for you. Because that knowing and naming those feelings gives you strength, and it gives you hope that you will cope and that you will get through this. Journaling, as I mentioned, is a really good idea. Sometimes that word journal can be intimidating for people. So instead of using, if you don't like the word journal, just writing or expressing what you're feeling and putting it again out there so that it's not just bottled up in your gut. Meditation is helpful, and it can be just actual meditation and chants, or just deep breathing in and out, and calm, deep breathing, lighting a candle, listening to some quiet, soft, gentle music. Exercise is really helpful because exercise, as we know, generates those endorphins, which is kind of like a natural antidepressant. Being out in nature can be such a good feeling, almost a sense of spirituality, if you will, being out there and smelling the trees and feeling like you're just part of this world, because sometimes grief can make us feel we're not part of this world. And nature gives back, even though we might not think about that. Nature really does give back. So I started with C.S. Lewis, and again, I think you'll be able to tell I'm a deep admirer of his writing. But C.S. Lewis's grief is like a long valley, a winding valley where any bend may reveal a totally new landscape. Well, I think that resonates for many of us, particularly at these holiday seasons. And as I say, milestones, because it's not just Christmas, not just holiday, even though that's probably the biggest challenge. It's other annual events like birthdays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, all those other times when we're profoundly going to miss that loved one. They do present a totally new landscape. You and your family will be experiencing a completely change in that landscape because that person you loved so much is not there this year. So with that, I'm going to end. I'd like to end with a little message of hope. Again, please remember you're not alone. Please find someone that you can share with or talk to, or just even using your scribbly paper and writing down what you're feeling so that, again, you're putting it out there. I'd like to leave by sharing with you hopes for a peaceful holiday season, and I wish you well, and you will get through this. Thank you very much.